All right, welcome back to another Wheel of Time video. It has been a minute. I know, it has been a minute since I released a Wheel of Time video. Obviously, I was on a family vacation, and then WatCon, and then COVID. Yay! Lots of things just snowballing on top of one another. But this video is overdue. This is an interview that I did while at WatCon with Sharon Gilham, and it's amazing. And I'm going to tell you, the most hilarious thing, when I finally had the energy and whatnot and put the video in to start editing, I was shocked. We talked to her for an hour. I did not know that. When it happened, it just went by so fast. And I'm sorry we kept her for an hour. I truly didn't know. It was such a good conversation. And it just, wow. Yeah, so when I say we, I mean myself and Pez, who was there, did this. And this is just the first half of the conversation. This is the part where we're talking about the Shanchan, Savannah, the hat, the controversial hat. And yeah, Sharon was so generous with her time and with her answers. Like, she didn't just, every answer she gave was thorough and thoughtful and considered, and you just can tell the passion and the love that she had for this project. And yeah, I want more of it, so I'm just gonna the link to the Save Watt campaign in the description below. You can sign the petition, you can send letters to streamers, you can send postcards to streamers. There's all sorts of action items that you can do to try and get us more of the show, because the costumes alone, and I know that the level of detail and the level of passion and care that went into that, it's amazing. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, it's just the first half of the conversation. Oh, before we go into it, though, I just want to give a thanks and a shout out to Lauren, who was also there. You won't hear him in this half. You might hear him in the next half. We'll see what happens when I start to edit that. But Lauren from Unraveling the Pattern, I'm using his camera to film this, that you'll see, because I didn't have one. I was using my laptop to film this, and that was interesting. And he also is responsible for the fact that the sound is in complete crap, because he caught something at the beginning. There is still some sound issues because I was using, like I said, not my normal recording setup. I had these lavalier mics and whatnot, but he caught something at the beginning. So thank you so much to Lauren there. And oh, the other thing I guess I'll mention, just because you will notice it. I did have my avatar there, but because I was using my laptop, which is not as good as my desktop, and I hadn't gone through and, I'd been on vacation before this, so I hadn't actually gone through and checked it. The facial tracking was crap. You'll notice it. I don't know. There's not much I can do about that at this stage. But yes, it was, I was using my iPhone to track my face, as I always do, but the laptop, I think, was just not able to handle whatever was going on there. So, that's it. That's the disclaimers going in. But I hope you enjoyed the first half of this hour conversation. I can't believe we talked to her for an hour. Anyway, enjoy.
Let's be nerdy with Let's Be Nerdy. Let's be nerdy with Let's Be Nerdy.
You're here with the Sharon Gilham, who designed the costumes for the Wheel of Time, and I am very excited to talk to you. Pez and I have been discussing the questions that we would like to ask you, and I realize that my questions are mostly going to be, it's very pretty. This is not much of a question, I suppose. Pez has taught me so much about costume design, and I know that it has changed the way I watch other shows. Like, I've picked up on things, but the detail that goes into the costumes in the Wheel of Time, maybe I'm biased, but it does seem to surpass a lot of what I see on other shows. And I don't even know where the question is in that, except just, wow. I know that's not a question. I know the question. I'm going to ask you a question. I don't remember all of the questions that you had, but there's something that I remember you bringing up about, like, when the Shanchan appeared and there were all these beautiful pleats in their costumes. I was like, that's amazing. They came up with that. And she was like, no, that's in the books. Because I don't, when I read, that's not something that's of interest to me. I tend to just jump over it. And now I've gone back and read it. And I'm just wondering how much of that, like, when you were told, you had the Shanchan coming, what must have been very overwhelming.
Yep.
Yes. How much, like, did you go and read those passages? How much research did you have to do into to getting that?
So yeah, the Shanshan was the first thing I had to do when I started on season 2, because because of COVID, they hadn't finished shooting season 1 when they started season 2. So when we started season 2, so the the Shanshan appear in that very last scene of season 1, and so that was the first. I had to create the army as my first job, and it was almost like we had some prep, but they were still shooting, so we kind of like had less prep and had to do that first. And so it was massive. It was an enormous thing to be able to be like kind of thrown into with such high stakes in a way, because obviously then the Shanshan were going to be so important through season 2. I just jumped in, I didn't have any choice, and I was very excited about starting working on the show. Sarah Nakamura, who who she is, yeah.
She's very famous.
Yeah, and she was very famous for us as well, because she was such an important part of our understanding of what the books were, because I hadn't read the books, and I got the job and I started like a month later or 3 weeks later. So I just had to work with the scripts, because I had to do a lot straight away. So Sarah, all the time, if ever there was a new character or a new culture or a new nation, I would say to her, can you tell me everything you can? Send me all the information. So she would take the information from the books and send me, like pages of A4 of quotes and descriptions, anything to do with costume. And so I used that as the source, as the starting point, because it's like you don't get that much information normally from a script. I haven't really worked on a show, I don't think, that's based on a book before, or a series of books. It's always been a script, and then then you talk to the director, and you'd sort of build from there. But with the Wheel of Time, there is all that rich layers of information that is your starting point. And so is really lucky and really a positive thing, like a massively positive thing. And like I'm always talking about respect for the fans, because you can't do a job like the Wheel of Time without referring to the books really, really intricately, and without respecting the fans as well, because they all love it for a reason. But having said that, there was that massive chunk of information, and then the Shanshan, when that it's a mix of Mesoamerican and Imperial Chinese, then you do your research based on that in our world, and then I guess then there's my element, my input, personal input, which comes from it could be a fashion sort of background, or it could be something else that's just occurred to me that's interesting as an idea to put into the mix. So it's like this big bowl that you're making an amazing cake, and you're putting in Robert Jordan, putting in the cultures in our world, and then adding a sprinkling of my own ideas on top of that. And so you end up with tons of information, because there is a lot of information in the books. There is a lot out there, just two cultures, one culture on its own in our real world. There's years of history, there's all the textiles, there's all the visuals, there's all the colors. And so you have to sort of put all this stuff together and then filter it, so that you end up and you start making choices about, I'm going to use this color palette for the Shanshan, for example. And I don't know if I said this before, if I've said it in an interview, but and I might talk about it tomorrow, because I gave, when we're talking about the costumes, I've also, Justin was asking me if we could also talk about the season 2 costumes as well. So I sent him my mood boards for the Shanshan, which is like all the historical, all the cultural references and things, and how I made the decisions that I made. And because you find all this reference, but even within the reference, you have to whittle it down. You have to make choices, and you have to, it's like, one of the many things that's so fantastic about designing for the Wheel of Time is that you choose what you want to take from those cultures, and then you leave things behind rather than strictly having to adhere to it. But you do have to make your own language. You do have to make your own vocabulary so that it all makes sense within itself. And then when you start to work on the hierarchy, then you know why you're making that decision, and it all fits together. Yeah. So it's a very, very long answer because it is complex, you know. Yeah, so that's it. And I would always give something a color palette because it helps with the choice of fabrics and the colors and things that we're using, dyeing things, you know, all of those things. And it gives a coherence, a visual coherence, and helps the audience understand what that culture is and who they are. Yeah. When you move away, you know, that's that color palette. You know, I think human beings relate a lot to color. And so that really helps to see that and clarify that, especially for the non-book readers who don't really know what the story is. There's a lot going on.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Were you just designing season by season? You mentioned you were kind of overlapping a little bit with season 1. Did you have the references, for example, that were provided to you from the books? Did that go into the entirety of the books where things were going to go in the future so that you could layer that in?
Normally not. It was more like the basic information, or probably like the initial descriptions, I guess, of cultures that Robert Jordan had written, or for characters. There wasn't really anything. There wasn't enough time, I guess, to talk about the things that happen in the future. But there have been times where, and this has happened to me a bit in other jobs, but really happened to me on this, where something kind of magical happened in the sense that I had all that information and I would use most of it at the time. And then later down the line, some part of it would come back. Or there was something that seemed to have been predicted, but I wasn't aware of it. And I said in an interview the other day that I felt like Robert Jordan was talking to me through the ether or something, because there were some times where I just did things instinctively, and there'd be a response, like if I posted something on Instagram, and one of the fans would say, "Oh, did you do that because of whatever reason?" And I was like, no, but it really makes sense why that happened. And one example of that was Rand's jacket that he wears at the end of episode 8. And and I was talking about the way that was conceived and what the story is in the pattern and the weaving and his journey and so on. And I don't know who it was. Maybe it was one of you two. It said it's and also the pattern on the back, which is the red sort of shape that goes up the back. Because I said something about blood on his hands and things like that, and the color of the rocks of the Eel, and they said, "Oh yeah, I saw it as a sunrise because he is the one who comes with the dawn." And I was like, oh, yes. And I think oh my God, I just thought that was so beautiful. And I've talked about that a lot because when things like that happen or it's picked up, that's what I mean about him talking to me across the ether, because it's like there is a reason why that happened, you know, and you read it in there, and I think that's such a beautiful thing that is unusual. It's very unusual, you know, and I think it's many things. It could be many things, but it's like you could also say that I'm really starting to enter into the world, but I don't know enough about it. You know, I'm such a novice really about the Wheel of Time, but I think that my belief in it is so strong, and my love for the characters and the storytelling means that maybe things are just coming through without me even consciously being aware of it, which is so great.
You can definitely tell looking at the costumes how much you put into them. So just thank you as fans for giving us that experience. It was wonderful. We certainly hope it continues.
Yes, I know. One way or another.
Yes. Yeah. Looking at my questions now. In behind the scenes material from season 1, we saw a map of the world that had some reference images of different textiles or patterns that were associated with different countries. Was that something that you used in your work on the show as well?
I know the one you're talking about. Not so much, because it was kind of Isis' world. And I think when I came in, because she'd done it for a lot of different cultures that we didn't see in season 1, and we weren't seeing immediately. So I kind of didn't use it straight away because it didn't have a reference and a relevance for me immediately. I know that with Two Rivers, there were some textiles and so on, because Two Rivers were obviously really featured in season 1. But in season 2, Two Rivers was really hardly seen. And so I didn't, there were bits and pieces of it. I remember we used the costumes from season 1, but I didn't have to really focus on it until season 3. And then by that time, I think I'd kind of forgotten that those things existed. So I was just moving on into another way of looking at it, actually, and sort of slightly rejigging it, dialing up the English side of it and so on. So and Isis was brilliant. She was really generous, and she talked to me a lot about what she'd done in season 1. But I think because season 2 introduced a lot of new cultures or nations and a lot of new characters, that I just had to kind of go, right, season 1, and now I'm doing all of this,
Absolutely. I'm curious to know how much the background of the actors also influences the costumes as well. I know I was very proud of this. I noticed for Land's costumes, I think it was Lane and me that noticed that it was a hanbok, it's a Korean hanbok that he's wearing. And Daniel Henney has a Korean background. And then I read an interview with him where he mentioned that they had planned to put in, I think, something akin to a samurai. And he said, I actually am Korean, if it's possible. And I'm curious if that has happened with other actors, like Priyanka, for example, or whatnot, if you're using their backgrounds.
Yeah, I think with Priyanka, with Alana, I did sort of, with her jewelry, did go in down the the Indian sort of jewelry reference route. But I think that was more about, I tried not to, unless somebody asked specifically for it, I tried not to kind of follow their cultural background, because I think the whole point about the Wheel of Time is not just putting everything into one box, narrowing it down. It's much more about opening it up. And I used a lot of the Indian jewelry on her costumes, because it is like armor, like Indian jewelry.
Sorry, I just answered literally. I'm asking because it was a sort of a conversation that we were having. Is it because it's armor?
Yeah, much more. I mean, that was my take on the Green Eyes Today's jewelry as armor. And so, all the ear jewelry that she wears, all the hair jewelry, it just made sense to do that. And I would have done it whatever nationality the actress was. And otherwise, not really. No, I mean, a lot of the actors are, well, actually, I suppose there's, Nynaeve Zoe is New Zealand, etc. And yeah, exactly. And I think in a way they bring that just by virtue of who they are. And I didn't, unless it was actually relevant to the character, I didn't necessarily include those elements, because there's so many other things to bring in. Yes. You know what I mean? If I started including their own kind of background, cultural background, it's like one thing too many. It would just tip into like chaos. Yeah.
Especially with so many characters.
Yes, exactly.
And such a diverse cast.
Yeah, that's what's so fantastic. I mean, Rafe and Justine were so brilliant at the way the casting was done, and also in the crowd, just insisting on diversity all the time. And in Prague, it's not easy to do that, because, it's a very white country, and But they really, really insisted on it. And I think that's something that I have taken with me as an idea and a concept and a reality, actually, that it can be done, and I think that's really important.
Did you have any favorite costumes that you worked on?
I was asked this question earlier, and I think it's when there's so many costumes. I've been asked by Sony to choose 20 costumes across the 3 seasons for them to keep in their archive. It's so difficult because the minute you say, this 10, and then you think, yeah, but there's another 25, 30, 40 that I would want to include in here because there's such a range of costumes. I think there's certain things that were I felt really proud of at the time because I felt like we're creating something that's like a museum piece. So like the Swan Sanchez costume, Amarillo costume with that cape with the embroidery on it, the little pointy one she wears in season 3 as well. That was like what started as a piece of a vintage fabric that was then copied and embroidered by hand and added onto. So because it was just one, the piece that we had was only enough to make one section of that little capelet thing. And so when we were doing that, I started, and somebody was doing gold work, embroidery, which is really beautiful and really kind of painstaking. And I suddenly felt like, oh my God, this is really not just a costume. This is like I don't know. It has so much more value than that. And Sophie Ocanedo actually sent me a message this morning to say, I told her that I was here, and she said, oh, that's fantastic. And she said, she said, I can't bear to think of all your costumes locked away in the storage. They need to be seen, because I was saying about costumes being here. But no, anyway, so that was one. I think, the costumes that had all the that when I started to get quite abstract, so Moraine's armor and Rand's jacket, I loved doing the Eel Fin because it was so different from a beautiful dress, but it had all that meaning, still layering it in there, pushing it, getting all the information, and also knowing, that you're going to create something that probably will never be seen on camera, because the scenes, they never have enough time in TV shows to see things properly. And Kieran, the director, sent me a video that he'd got the DOP, the camera operator, to film the back of the eel fin going down really slowly from top to bottom, which was is not in the final edit. But I have got it on my phone, so I might have to post it or something at some point. But it was just like, you can because then you see there's a bit little ears and noses and things going down that spine at the back. So that was a great fun costume, and it was also great because it was such a great collaboration between us and the makeup effects department, and prosthetics and every job you do, you learn something new. But I think when your department start to interact like that, that's really exciting. But yeah, I had a massive team, and everybody is so talented, and it's just that, having a scrap of fabric and then somebody makes meterage out of that in 3 different colors. That's that was Nynaeve's costume when she's in Tanchico. I had this tiny piece of fabric that I'd found in a vintage shop in London, and I took it to Lily and I went, do you think you could make this into meterage? And she came up, and the next time I saw her, she had 4 different colorways of this fabric. And and it's like being in the most creative, playful place, but with a deadline, so you kind of got to keep going, and just with incredibly talented people. It's a fantastic playground.
I have a specific question about Savannah's costume, because it is very different to how she's described in the books. And yet, when she showed up on screen, in my reaction, I burst out laughing because it could be nobody other than Savannah. I was like, there's nobody, that is absolutely Savannah. How did you come up with that?
The big headdress thingy.
So unique in everything she wears. And of course, Savannah was wearing that. Again, not how it's described in the books, but of course, that's what Savannah is wearing. It makes perfect sense.
Well, yeah, I think that's an example of how I was so deep in it by then that I could come up with something that that hit the nail on the head, like you said. Because I actually don't, when I was doing Savannah, I don't remember being given lots of information about her, and I don't know why. But we started that costume when we were in Prague, and I was going down the whole route of her being like a maiden of the spear. And then Rafe said, when we got to South Africa, Rafe said, "Oh, well, that's not really the right direction. She needs to be," and then he uttered the fatal words of, "She needs to be like the Lady Suroff of season 3." And I was like, "What?" I didn't have any time. And I just was like, how can I do this in like a week or something? Because the Suroff took a long time developing in season 2. But this is this sort of magic thing as well. Like I had these fabrics that I bought in India in, whenever that was, the previous year in February, and brought it to Prague, taken it to South Africa, not really knowing what to do with it. But I wanted, when he said that, I was like, okay, I've got to do something quite dramatic for her, but she's going to be outside in the boiling hot. We've got no time. I need something that's going to be comfortable to wear and easy to take on and off, but really have the drama. And I got a head block, like a wooden head block that we'd brought with us. And I had that fabric, that fabric is sewn like that. It's hand sewn in this sort of, it's like a woven sort of way. Yeah, like braided, exactly. And so and it's silk, so it's quite light, but it has a real sculptural quality to it. So I just got this head block on my desk, and I just started playing with the fabric. And I like wearing hats. I think people, like things on people's heads is going to be a certain amount of drama. And Natasha, who plays Savannah, she can carry it off. Like she is the most beautiful girl, and she's tall. And I just sort of started doing this with it. And then I just was like, that's interesting. And then Andy, who makes her costumes, I was like, Andy, can you make that into a headdress? Bye. And so she did. And Savannah came in for the fitting, and she kind of went, and I went, just let's have a look. And she put it on and she went, oh, yeah, okay. And I took some photographs of her just, from the front and the side, and she had no makeup on, and I just knew that it was going to be the thing. I knew it was going to be great. Yeah. And, Rafe also at the beginning of season 2, I think he might have said to me, I don't like hats. Don't put hats, don't want hats. But a lot of people don't. A lot of directors don't like it because they say you can't see your eyes. Right. A lot of people are scared of hats because they think they're too much, which sometimes they are. So at the beginning of season 2, and we did Kyrene for the first scenes, I'd put, the women have those headdresses on, which somehow I got away with. But I also put berets on people because it's like the French-Japanese thing. And he instructed, he didn't talk to me, he instructed someone, the ADs, to go and take all the berets off everybody. So I was like, oh, never mind. And then I did Suroff, and then somehow after that, he just looked away. I don't know. And, and he just then let me do it. And I think if I hadn't done that headdress on Savannah in that costume, it wouldn't have had nearly the drama, and it wouldn't have given her that extra element of somebody like really trying to impose herself in the Eel world, because, nobody else is dressed like that, as you said. And, again, part of the thing about the Eel for me was that I was a bit like, oh, it's just going to be like really dull because it's just people in beige clothes and so on. And I remember Justine saying, oh, they're all supposed to look like, it says in the books, I think they're all misshapen and they all just look really dowdy and stuff. And that was just so, oh gosh. But then once I got going, obviously I can't help myself. There's always going to be some decorative element and texture and so on. But with Savannah, she had to look different. And it was just, again, the lucky, let's say, I don't know, lucky, or was it some kind of karma? No, not karma, some kind of, exactly. that was just there. And that fabric was in my peripheral vision, and it made sense, and it gave her, but it still fitted in. Yes. It still made sense in that world. And it was still felt like it was something that could have been made by hand by people, because it was actually, that fabric was made by hand, and the whole thing about, for me, the design side of the Wheel of Time, that it needs to look as if it was made using technology pre-industrial revolution. And so it still had that feel about it, even though, it references lots of different things, but it doesn't feel super modern or out of place in like I said, in that environment.
Absolutely. You did bring up hats, and Rafe not liking hats. We were discussing this briefly downstairs. There was a very controversial hat in season 3. I loved the hat. It made perfect sense. She's in the desert. There's a lot of sun. Of course she wants a hat. Any thoughts about the specific hat that Moraine was wearing? I honestly was shocked when there was controversy about it. I thought it was fabulous.
I know, it's funny, isn't it? But that just goes to show how people do have a thing about hats and finding it. I know they said that there were comments about looking like an old granny or something, whatever. But okay, so the honest truth about it is that Rosamund was really, really anxious about being out in the sun all that time. So my job is a designer, but there are percentages. I haven't really worked out what they are, because it depends on the job. But I have to have the design thoughts in my mind. I have to look after my actors, and they have to be comfortable in the costume, because otherwise it doesn't work, and they can't do their job, and that's what I'm here for. I have to make sure that the costumes do fit into the worlds that I'm creating. And I have to do scheduling, and I have to, there's lots of different things that I have to do, and planning ahead and making repeats and all of these things. So when I make a decision like that, because it is a big decision, and, it has to be the right decision for many reasons. But I would never do something if I didn't think it worked for the character and for the show as well, and for the environment that people are in. And people were saying, I know that people have also said the thing about some of the costumes, like, well, they wouldn't have worn clothes like that at that time. But the thing is that the Wheel of Time is not a historical document. No. It's the Wheel of Time. So that's what I've said to people when I'm trying to explain about the costumes, is that there's this collective consciousness in people's minds in the Wheel of Time from stories that have been passed down from the Age of Legends, that people might be creating things that they didn't make in medieval times in our time. But this is not that. This is something else. So why can't we say that hat was something that people make? Yeah. It didn't not make sense to me. So I would never put a costume in that was just totally incongruous and just because I felt like it. It was weird, I guess, because nobody else was wearing a hat like that. If there have been lots of other, it's like Tanchiko, everyone's in veil, so you get it and you believe it, and everybody is wearing their version of it. But really, it was done for preliminary, for practical reasons, and we tried a lot of different hats on her. And it had to look like something that somebody had made. That was the other thing. It didn't, Rosamund is very specific about everything that she wears, and she's very open to trying things. But she also knows a lot about what suits her and what works on her and works as well as working for the character. And so, she chose that hat with me. as out of one of many things. We were going to put her in the sort of turban-y thing, but the director didn't like that idea at all. It was a bit like 1930s sort of style, which she loved, and it would also have worked in the Eel kind of world. But he didn't like it, so we had to go down another route. We had to try another avenue, and nobody is going to like everything that you do all the time. And that's also, I think, a really important thing. That's part of my job, to know that and understand it. And all I can do is explain why I made those decisions. You still don't have to like it, and that's okay. That's fine. Everyone is entitled to their opinion.
All right, there you have it. This, like I said, is the first half of the conversation. It's been a while. The second half, I haven't started editing yet. I can't quite remember all the details that we talked about in the second half, but I know it was a good conversation because Pez and I were floating afterwards. So, look forward to that. It is going to be coming up. Let me know your thoughts on this. Have you come around on the hat? I loved the hat. I don't understand why people were upset with the hat, but anyway, let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. And if you like my content and you want to support me, I also have a Patreon that is linked in the description below. As always, to my patrons, thank you so much for your continued support. I could not do this without you, so thank you. And with that, I am gonna end this here, so please like, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.